Accrediting Excellence, the international authority for professional coaching and mentoring, proudly presents Both Sides of the Coin.
Are you a perfectionist? What about some of the clients you work with? How much of their stress, anxiety, judgments by the inner critic, or overwhelm comes from perfectionism? Today, as coaches and mentors, we'll get some top tips on how to coach people who are perfectionists. Welcome to Both Sides of the Coin, a podcast produced by the IAPC and M. We're a leading accreditation body, and our aim is to increase public confidence and to raise industry standards by enforcing a rigorous accreditation process that ensures the quality of professional coaches and mentors. The podcast is aptly named Both Sides of the Coin because we talk to both a coach or mentor and one of their clients to explore both sides of the coaching mentoring intervention, what works and what doesn't. As the proverb says, iron sharpens iron. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm Jenny Butter, your host and an accredited master coach, and I've been coaching for 10 years, mainly in the area of career transition and life coaching. Joining me today are Aylin Webb and her client, Elizabeth. Aylin is a perfectionism specialist and combines Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, EMDR Therapy, NLP and Coaching to enable her clients to discover their inner strength, regain their self-confidence, overcome self-doubt, and learn to trust themselves again. Aylin's client, Elizabeth, is a teacher and over the last 9 months has felt anxiety on a variety of scales. Aylin, tell me about yourself.
So I was born and raised in Istanbul. Then I moved to Denmark. So I have knowledge of different cultures, which also helps me. And I moved to London from there about 22 years ago. So I was a TV producer for channels such as Viasat, Fox Kids, Disney Channel, Universal Channel, Virgin, and so on. And there was a point where I thought, okay, I love this. However, how sustainable is that going to be as the years go? The new blood is coming, youngsters are coming in. And so I had to do my future self a favor. And there was psychology was something I always wanted to study, and with full-time work and raising a daughter, there was always time restrictions. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And it was, it was hard work, and it was many, many years. But I am actually really glad I look back now to my younger self and say thank you for doing that, because I love absolutely what I do.
Why did you decide to specialise in perfectionism and helping people to overcome that trait?
There are several reasons for that. However, I realised the kind of clients that I was attracting. And that also helped me in time to understand myself, that I never thought that I had been a perfectionist and that I had grown up with a perfectionist mom as well. And you start having your own insight to your own story. And it really affects your self-esteem as well, and your confidence in yourself and your abilities. So I wanted to share that journey and empower other women as well. So that was, and it is, I can also see perfectionism also lies underneath many issues such as obsessive compulsive disorder, general anxiety disorder, worry mainly, and eating problems, or even cleaning having your house neatly organized, the worries about what other people think about you, and so on. So social judgment, social anxiety. So it is in the basis of so many things anyway. So I thought we are just going to go all the way to the bottom of this and hit it in the core, rather than just dancing around with, worry or OCD and social anxiety and so on, just going all the way to the bottom of that perfectionist thinking.
Aylin, please could you describe for me, in your mind, what a perfectionist is?
Yes, so there are several ways, but perfectionists usually don't know they are perfectionists. Several of my clients, they say, "Oh, I thought perfectionists were the perfect people, the ones that seem to have everything in order and they're always successful. They have everything." In fact, perfectionism, it sounds positive, but it hides a lot of negative impact behind that word. So the basic thing about perfectionism is when you have so high expectations of yourself that it is impossible for any human to reach constantly. And when you are not there, when you don't reach them every time, you doom yourself to be a failure. So you're either success or you're a complete failure and you're an idiot. So there's no in between, and you're completely rigid about it, and you doom yourself a failure all through lifespan when you are not succeeding in one thing. But if you succeed in another thing, you will just downplay it and say, it's not a big deal. Anyone can do it. Anyone. So you don't actually celebrate your successes properly either. So that constant high expectations from yourself could be from others as well. So you might be setting up high expectations and relentlessly high expectations upon others. Or you might perceive that other people are expecting some certain standards from you. So you constantly make up in your mind what they would expect, what your teachers would expect, what your boss would expect, what your parents would expect, what your friends would expect, what your partner would expect from you. And you try to live up to that standard. So, and that leads to constant work to try and reach those high standards. And of course, it's not humanly possible. Then you start becoming frustrated, anxious. You start criticizing yourself. Inner critical voice is quite usual, quite normal with perfectionists. You become overwhelmed as you go, trying to reach up those high standards. You can't let go of your worries, and it just becomes too much, and you lose your self-worth because your self-worth is constantly dependent on your achievements.
Thank you so much for that definition and for clarifying for me. From your experience, does perfectionism go across genders, all cultures, all ages, all social classes, or would you say it's more in one of those than the other?
It actually does go over across cultures and countries. The research shows that, for example, procrastination is a very typical behavior of perfectionism, and that is across the world, for example, because you worry that you're not going to do it perfectly. So you just keep going around and avoiding what you really, really need to do. So there are different reasons. We have perfectionism in different areas. So it could be with parenting, it could be with your academic or professional life. It could be about your home, how immaculate it has to be. It could be about your look. It could be about your social performance. So there could be lots of different areas, and it could be across those areas. It could show itself across the areas, or you could actually be just in one or two areas, rigidly perfectionist.
Thank you. So when you start with a client, take me through the process, the questions that you ask to help them overcome this perfectionism trait.
It comes out pretty quickly. We look, as soon as we have in our assessment, we're discovering what's happening. We usually quite quickly find out whether, the client and I, when we say we, it's myself and the client, we kind of look into those rigid mindset coming out very early in the first session. So there is that rigidity, and there is the self-worth being very dependent on the achievements and the success. So often I will see my clients suffering with low self-esteem and very critical inner voice. The way they speak to themselves is quite critical. So the questions, well, I guess there are, when we are exploring what's going on with the clients, we ask very similar questions, whether you're a perfectionist coach, whether whether you are a trauma coach or mindset coach. So we want to find out what's going on. And usually I just ask the client, for example, what does that say about you? What does that mean about you? Which then brings out their limiting beliefs. Often I go for, and what else? And what else? And what's the worst thing that can happen? And often we come down to, well, I'm an idiot. I will fail, or I am a failure. So that those are often the limiting beliefs that come out with the perfectionists. And there is responsibility. For example, if you have OCD, perfectionism at the bottom, you will get, I'm responsible. It will be my fault, for example. So, and people will think I'm stupid. In the cases of, for example, social anxiety, I must make conversations, and I must make clever conversations, and I must be able to entertain everybody. So then you go, and what else? And what else? And what else? And you come down to, what does that say about you? What kind of person couldn't be entertaining others? And they say, well, a stupid person. So you come down to, that's the limiting belief, that they don't want to look stupid. And then we start challenging those, because those limiting beliefs, they come from, often they are formed in our childhood and in our teenage years as well. So, and they don't get upgraded like a computer. Computers get upgraded, but the beliefs don't, unless you actually go and speak to somebody, or you start thinking, hang on a moment, is that really true? And start looking for new perspectives and new ways, and challenge that limiting belief, and start gathering evidence against that limiting belief, where we then use the reticular activating system in our brain to gather new evidence to prove the new belief that is more helpful for the client.
And so what top tips have you got for coaches who have clients similar to you who strive for perfection?
Yes, I would say challenging those beliefs are important. But first, I guess the first thing is to really identify the triggers. And what are the triggers doing? What kind of negative automatic thoughts? What kind of rules are there the clients employed in order to avoid those limiting beliefs, because they are not nice, they are disturbing. So the client doesn't want to feel that. They employ some rules such as if, then, or I must. So checking what those rules of living are. If I don't do everything perfectly, then people will realize that I'm not good enough, for example. Yeah. So you employ those, and you say yes and yes and yes to everything, so that people think that you're okay. They won't see your shortcomings, because that's the rule you have made. So check the rules of living, check the musts, the shoulds of the client, go down to the limiting beliefs, and then challenge them. Work on building the client's self-esteem through self-compassion. You will find that many of them have this inner critical voice so loud that they actually they don't actually have any self-compassion. So encourage self-compassion and mindfulness, being in the moment. Look at that cycle with beliefs and emotions, physical sensations, and the actions, what kind of outcome is coming, and how the client can come out of this cycle. You can decide together. And values. I think that's a big one. Working with the client and connecting them to what is dear to their heart, what really matters for them. Assertive communication is another one that we work with. And the how of happiness. There is a lot of research out there about the tips for happiness. So we start working on the things that actually proved to help people to have a more positive outlook to life, such as journaling and noticing what you have, so mindfulness and gratitude, writing, etc. So we look at what we have and connect those with the values as well.
Thank you so much. Some fabulous top tips there for us as coaches. I'm going to flip over the coin now and speak to your client, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, tell me about yourself.
My main thing about myself is I'm a primary school teacher, and I pride myself on kind of being a great teacher, or didn't used to, but now I do. I live in the countryside, always have done, been brought and raised up in England. I went to a really good school, and I've got a really lovely family, big family. I like doing yoga and Pilates and being with my friends, and just being kind of in nature and going for long walks, read my book, that sort of thing. But my main thing is I'm a teacher. I'm through and through a primary school teacher.
Why did you want coaching?
I have always been interested in the brain and how it works. I've always been a big advocate of people getting any type of kind of coaching in life, but I've never thought it was not for me. But I've always said to my friends and my family, oh yeah, I think you need to go and speak to someone. I think you need to get some support. But I've always said, oh no, I don't need it, I'm fine. I've always been a worrier. Will worry about things that will not happen, but in my head it's already happened. I've always had busy thoughts and always never been able to quieten them, but never thought that was an issue. It's just how I always have been. And then about 9 months ago, I kind of got hit by a bus of anxiety, as I try and explain it. And from that, I kind of realised that I'm not indestructible and I do actually need to get some support. And from that, did. But yeah, it was more because my body kind of told me that I couldn't carry on the way I was. I think if my body had never kind of had that anxiety, I probably would still just be carrying on in the same way I have been. But yeah, all of a sudden one day I woke up and I couldn't function normally anymore, which is why I reached out in the first place. But now I can completely understand why I probably should have done it a long, long time ago.
And why did you choose Aylin to be your coach?
The process of choosing was really was quite overwhelming, actually. I got given a long list of names and people, and didn't really understand a lot of the kind of jargon of it. But this may sound really silly, but I just saw Aylin's face and I thought, you just look a really smiley, personable person. And I think that is something that a lot of people go for, is just feeling a connection to somebody. I then did a lot more research and went on her website and just really kind of connected to a lot of the things that she was saying about mindfulness and kind of eye movements and different things that I thought, actually, that is things that I think I would be able to connect with. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to that have had different coaching have said you've got to connect with the person that is coaching you, and if you don't, it doesn't really work. And I just remember sending her a message and her ringing me, and we chatted for about half an hour, and I felt so important. And I think that was then like, yeah, okay, she's a person for me. I felt important, and I just went from there.
That's a great testimony for Aylin. Can you give me an example of something you have applied through your coaching into your day-to-day life?
So many things. I think the main thing is I've just learnt a lot about myself, and learnt different quotes or different things that Aylin has said that I've now every day throughout the day, I just stop and think, okay, that's me feeding the wolf. You need to stop feeding the wolf. Or that's different things that I'm doing. And I think, okay, I've just noticed. I think that's my main thing I'm doing now, is I'm noticing what I'm doing, not noticing negative habits I'm getting into, or if I'm having a busier day at work and I haven't taken time just to sit and breathe. And then I think, okay, there you are. You're putting something else ahead of your kind of mental health. You need to stop. So it's just noticing different things that I'm doing, or rushing around, or thinking of the shoulds that I should be doing, and sitting there thinking, okay, there's a should. You need to stop doing that. You could do that. So I would say noticing things throughout the day that I would just normally have a negative kind of habits constantly of the things that I'm doing. Whereas now I've noticed that actually they're the things that have got me into not a very good mental kind of place, and noticing and stopping and reacting from that.
And how has that positively affected some of the things that, we were talking about earlier, the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm?
Oh, massively. I think it's just, when people talk to me about it, I just say my brain is quieter. And I think that's just a brilliant kind of explanation of it all. My brain is quieter. I used to just constantly have thoughts running through my head. I should have done that. I should have done this. And I remember talking to people after and saying, what, is that not normal? Is that not what's happening in your brain? And people being like, no, that's not what's happening. And now I kind of understand, okay, well, this makes sense that I did get in such a, I don't want to say state, but into a bit of a state. And now I'm like, okay, this all makes sense now.
My final question for you today is, based on your coaching experience, what would you say to other coaches so they can improve the way that they work with their clients?
I think getting to know them inside out. I feel like before we got to the point where strategies got put into place into how to support me, I feel like Aylin knew me in all my feelings and everything, in every situation, and anything that I would say got noticed. I felt I was listened to constantly. So I think just listening to your client and understanding where they're coming from, and I mean, I guess it's a given, I would think, but not judging anything they said would probably be a given. But I think that's really important, and just listening to everything and going with it and going down the path, because I think as a client, I didn't go into this knowing what I wanted out of it. I don't ever go into a session and think, okay, today I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to feel better. But just going down whatever path arises on that day, and not being too rigid with sessions and just going with it. And if it's just a chat one day, it's just a chat. Or if it's going into something deep, or it's going into the past or the future, and just going with it that day.
What a great discussion. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And thank you so much, Aylin. And if you would like to work with Aylin, then she can be contacted at mindandmood.co.uk. We're confident that anyone who attains an international authority for professional coaching and mentoring accreditation will be amongst the very best that the profession has to offer. So if you're someone who's interested in having some coaching or mentoring and want to find an accredited coach, mentor, or training provider, or if you're a professional who's interested in becoming accredited, then please go to our website, coach-accreditation.services. And finally, if there's a topic that you would like me to cover on future episodes of Both Sides of the Coin, then I would love to hear from you. My email, jenny.podcast@coach-accreditation.services. Bye for now.